Hi, everyone. Great to meet you all. I'm coming here from London today and love Stockholm, so thank you for having me. And I'm going to give you an analog presentation. I feel very analog after that AI demo, but I'm one of those AI-pilled people, so you'll kind of pick up from this. So what we wanted to talk about today is actually much more of a grounded conversation. So going back to the introduction, zero hype, how is retail doing when it comes to AI adoption, and what's holding everybody back? And I have the benefit of being a former retailer myself. I'm an investor for a family office in the UK, and we invest in AI and consumer. And I actually spend a lot of time with private equity firms helping them embed AI in their businesses. And I'm an AI developer, which I never thought I'd be as a board member at this stage in my career. So you really can build anything. So where are we? So 95% of retailers are using AI. I'm sure everyone here has Copilot, Claude, GPT. People are prompting, summarizing documents, a lot of administrative stuff. 5% feel like they're getting a return. And so where is the market? And so what's interesting to me is the market versus where retailers are moving almost in completely different directions. You can see that actually, and this is representative of the US market, but the US market's actually very much engaged with AI. And while from a shopping perspective, shopping in LLMs doesn't feel very native, from an agentic perspective, a lot of consumers are actually already using these agents to complete tasks, research trips, buy things on repeat, subscriptions through Amazon, through Walmart, through other major retailers. And so it is coming quite quickly. And just today, we actually saw Google Spark launched, and Google Spark is a new agentic platform which has a 900 million user addressable audience to sell to. And so that's quite interesting because I think you're going to see a lot more adoption a lot faster. In terms of where it's headed, and I thought this was pretty interesting because all of these MCP, UCP, there's a lot of acronyms being thrown at people at the moment. It's quite technical. These are all just protocols. So when you think about when the internet was built, the internet's built on a protocol. And what made it so interesting is anybody could make anything. And then you had years and years of consolidation. You have Facebook, you have Google, you have organizations, organizing the world's data, organizing your social relationships. But with AI, everything's open again. So these protocols are so accessible that I actually last week decided that I would code a display unit that would allow me to purchase something inside an advertisement. And I was able to build that in 4 days. So that shows you that you really can build anything. And I'm usually pretty skeptical when it comes to some of these estimations around market share. This one I'm not for that reason, because I think everybody here will be hands-on, creating, building, disrupting. But what has to happen in order to do that? Well, the number one thing that I see is organizational change ultimately holds people back. And the time that I spend speaking to organizations, the themes are pretty consistent. We have a head of AI. We've put that individual in charge of the tech stack. Nothing's getting done. It's bottlenecked. Our head of tech says there's a queue of work. It's really long. We'll get to it. We're going to roll out Claude, but everybody just make do with Copilot because there's a token budget. So this is a lot of legacy behavior that's holding businesses back. So when you look at some of the US retailers on the far right, the first thing they did was prioritize org transformation. Because if you can't embed the technology inside the teams, it makes it much harder to move fast. It makes it much harder to build things without permission. And that's where the sense of agency comes into this movement, which, from my perspective, AI is not just a technology movement, it's a human movement, and it's a behavioral movement. So this is one of the major things retailers need to look at. From a transformation perspective, most people are kind of in the middle, first to middle box, I would say. Connected to core systems, workflows, KPIs, measurement. I see a lot of people in box 1 and box 2. Box 3 is AI native. It's going to take years to get there. So I think instead of taking in all of the hype, we see a lot of agentic development, we see a lot of opportunities. You have to start with use cases. And what I'm seeing more than anything else is people are actually hiring what's called a forward deployed operator. I happen to be one of those people. This is really somebody who identifies problems, uses AI tools, builds, ships solutions, and iterates. And really everybody in this room can do this. On the way here, I could see something in one of the tools that I built wasn't working properly for a client. I went into Claude Code on my phone. I updated my code base. I shipped something in a taxi, come here, present a presentation in old school PowerPoint, right? So these things are coexisting. We are using lots of tools, lots of things, but that's the main thing. Private equity is very big on this, so that's where I spend a lot of my time, as I mentioned. But I do think groups, people who have cross-functional setups to empower different division leads, this is incredibly important. And I think the main thing as well is that it also starts with leadership. So when I meet with C-suite teams, interestingly, the first thing they want me to do is automate their board pack, which is probably the most boring task that they have every single month on a recurring basis. And so you can automate all these things, and that's where executives are saying, well, we don't really have the skills in-house to do it. So I would say it's on everyone. Train yourself. This isn't going away. It's a very exciting time, and you can become a data scientist and a technician. But you can't disrupt yourself, right? So just because you have all of the talent in-house, let's say by next year, everybody in this room is vibe coding. That would be awesome. You have to start with something. And what most people realize when they start is actually their data isn't organized particularly well. And in order to leverage this technology, as you could see in the last presentation, you require data. You need insights, you need things to be organized. Quite a few of the businesses I work with use Snowflake. Snowflake plugs right into most of the LLMs, most of the harnesses. And within a couple days, people are actually engaging in what's called conversational analytics. What's happening in my business? How do I fix it? Please write me a presentation for my board in 3 seconds. Please create a campaign, et cetera. I think Voyato does a lot of this incredibly well. Actually, the agentic presentation, which I hadn't seen before today, really impressed me, and I think that's a huge step forward. Second thing is resistance. So for some of you in the room, you might feel like this is a little bit intimidating, and there's a lot of negativity in the press that we see. We also see a lot of empowerment. I think this is a phase. So if you remember when we were building e-commerce, and I was involved in that phase as well, I felt like everybody looked at me and thought, oh, they're going to take all the sales, right? And we don't want to share our sales with e-commerce. Those are really bad people, and they're going to take all the stock in the warehouse, right? And then you had different stock pools in the warehouse. This is very similar. So the more that we embrace and empower, I think the better off we all are, and I think that's where it's headed. And this is very much about human plus AI. As somebody who's built something end to end, I can tell you that there is no way that AI could have built anything on its own. And when you're deep in that, you really get a sense of that. And then the last bit is expertise. So the more you all become experts, the more you resolve this issue, and the faster your company moves. And then there's kind of the reality of some of this. So it would be really cool to find something to wear to the rock concert, and I would love for it to pick the perfect outfit for me. But the reality is I have stock problems, and I have food shortage issues if I'm an F&B. And we have a restaurant chain, so I've put AI across our systems as well. There's too many IT queries. How do I solve them? These are actually the things that are delivering ROI for a lot of retailers right now, in addition to the front-end user experience. And so while it might be tempting to do the sexy stuff, the unsexy stuff is kind of what makes money faster. And so where is the value in retail? Well, at the moment, it's in a number of places. And what I thought I would do is actually segment it like a funnel, right? You're thinking about growth, you're thinking about discovery, what do you do? Discovery is where a lot of the action is, and a lot of the usual suspects are, right? Amazon. So Amazon has, interestingly, an agentic experience like what Voyato are rolling out. they are experiencing a 4x increase in conversion, which is amazing, right? So if I was a P&L owner, I would be all over that. Search funnels, better personalization. I can say that I want to say 2012, I implemented a personalization solution, and I would say it was probably 20% personalized at best. And it was really difficult to get to that point where you didn't have a lot of manual intervention. Now what I see with AI is you don't have to do anything. The engine works for you. It's incredibly powerful. But being able to look under the hood, understand what the data's doing, have a good grasp on that, I do think is incredibly important so that you have control over your business. Then you get into consideration, and a lot of the businesses here are actually really engaging with in-store rather than digital. And I think that's because when you think about a brand funnel, there's a lot of investment that goes into driving demand, getting someone to even consider your products and services in the first place. Once they're there, what do you do? How do you engage them? I actually think AI can be incredibly powerful there. So some great case studies. Nordstrom working on, customization in store, which I think is incredibly interesting. Then you get into purchase and fulfillment. On the purchasing side, dynamic pricing comes up quite a lot. I'm on the board of a women's business in the UK. They're doing about 50 million, and we talk about pricing a lot. And the reason we talk about pricing is you have marketplace arbitrage, you have SKU dependency because you need width in order to compete in a digital environment. You have competitors undercutting your pricing. If you sell on Amazon, you have the reputation management piece. So pricing is going to become a really important device that you can use. And then on the fulfillment side, obviously, predictive analytics, again, stock, boring stuff. Boring stuff makes money. This is why you see a lot of people investing and building here. Customer service, we've talked a bit about today as well. Really impressive demo. I would say probably until about 4 months ago, I really despised AI customer service and I despised AI bots. I'm now noticing they're becoming helpful. So clearly the technology is evolving fast there. This is all driven by the models. How many of you use different AI models and understand the differences between them? Okay. I would say with the funnel as a whole, and you think about becoming an expert in this area, understanding the models is actually incredibly important because they're all a little bit different, and you access them through different harnesses. Lovable is a harness, Claude's a harness, and that is what's driving a lot of this enablement. So by keeping track of that in the market, you'll actually keep track of some of these innovations. Then you have retention, again, a lot of personalization, recommendations, and brand strength. And this is a huge area, happens to be the area I specialize in. So when I started building, at first I said to myself, I'm not going to become a coder. I'm sitting on boards. This isn't what I'm doing. I became so addicted to coding that I actually built a brand salience platform focused on AI. So I happen to be an expert in this area, but it's a big topic of conversation because the consumer starts with AI increasingly. You have media and AI converging. So think about a publisher where, The Economist or Financial Times or anyone, Vogue, their information, is increasingly put inside a model. Consumers want to find something, they start there. You're going to have voice-enabled discovery when you're driving in your car and you need a recommendation of somewhere to pull over. It's kind of endless, the number of modalities that you're going to see. So this is a big area. So I've included a couple slides here just to give you guys a bit of information because this is also moving very quickly. So I would say about a year and a half ago, you would hear a lot about AEO and GEO. I'm still not even sure what acronym wins. Maybe it's both. And there were a lot of people selling solutions that would help you hack your way to the top of ChatGPT. Obviously, ChatGPT now has paid advertisements, so that landscape is moving quite swiftly. As of yesterday, Google launched basically a policy that prevents people from hacking their way to the top of Gemini. And that's because we really don't want to see a repeat of what we've just seen with the internet. If AI can do anything, it should help us bring quality decisions, information. Otherwise, how can it be trusted? We already have a trust problem. So what we're actually seeing is as time passes and the models become much more sophisticated, about 70% of your performance in AI outside of your own website and your own channels is actually your brand strength. And your brand strength is basically your reviews, your social media channels, your video quality, conversations, press. It's your reputation that you've built up over 20 years on the internet that many brands have kind of neglected. So when you start looking at your, not only your visibility, but how AI describes you, this is where it's rooted in. And Reddit is particularly important. So when you think about scaling on Meta, a lot of people are now shifting to Reddit for that reason. I would say Reddit's incredibly behind on their advertising, though, so you don't have the sophistication to meet the demand. So when you look at share of voice, for example, this is going to become a reality in AI, where suddenly I'm H&M. I decided to use H&M, which I'm wearing H&M, by the way. Who else is appearing, and how much share of voice are they taking? Well, in the US market, which I spend a lot of time focusing on, you have 15 different brands coming up across 4 different models. And then you have how a model perceives H&M. This is the way that H&M describes, or sorry, this is the way that AI describes H&M, not how H&M describes H&M. So that's really important, because not only do you want to have control of visibility, you want to have control over how you're perceived. And brand building is one of those art and science disciplines. It takes a bit of time to kind of get a handle on that. And then you look at other things that are quite interesting. So this is actually something I did for the restaurant sector, and I can circulate one for retail after. But it looks at how many people are looking for different things, and what are you even considered against from a use case perspective. So in traditional branding, you talk about category entry points. It works the same in AI. Are you considered interesting for breakfast, lunch, dinner? Are you affordable? Who's looking for you for what, where? So these are a few examples just of the digital shelf piece on branding. And that is the end of the presentation. I put this quote here because this really is true, and you're seeing this again and again. The models are becoming incredibly sophisticated, so what we can do now will be incredibly different in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Does feel like a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Thank you.
I have a little question for you. So, AI adoption drives spends in ways that are pretty hard to predict. How should companies be budgeting for it? Like, how do you decide who gets priority and access internally?
So the model I'm seeing that's the most common, which I think is right based on the results, is set a token allowance. So again, the more sophisticated the model, the more expensive it is, and all the CFOs know this. So set aside like a champions team and give them an allocation of tokens and work with them on very specific use case development. Then measure the ROI and then roll it out over time. And that allows it to spread through the organization so that everybody has access. Going back to the head of AI setup doesn't work. But equally allows you to get ROI faster because you're much more focused.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Such an insightful session.